abortion is part of the ecology of birth. There's no world without a birth, abortion, and miscarriage. Like, they all are intertwined. When we take away people's power to control their family size, then we take away a lot of their power. This is, for me, at the heart of colonization.
This has been a needed service for women forever. And I do think abortion is birth control. You know, women having any ability to live a complete life, including a sexual life, which is part of their humanity, you know. You can't keep having babies forever, you know. Eventually your uterus is going to fall out between your legs, no matter how many babies you might want. So it's important, you know. It's like saying, why is it important to have antibiotics? You know, like, so people don't die, so people can live in the modern world with all the opportunities and choices we have available to us. Those things should be available to every human, not just half of us, you know.
We work to serve people who have uteruses in all the phases of life. You know, I love birth, and we love supporting people through pregnancies that they want to have. Abortion providers understand what the uterus, and they know that it goes through birth, and knowing if somebody's had a childbirth or a vaginal delivery or a C-section, like, all of those things are important for us to know when you're having an abortion, because it's all happening in the same place. People who are called to work in abortion care, like I said, are also just called to work in birth and serve this, like, just recognize this as just such a beautiful, fantastic process. You know, there's like this abortion doulas and people who serve people at the end of life doulas for a reason, because they're moments that you remember, they're pivotal moments in your life. It's all on the same spectrum. What I see as like the next step is, especially in the field of abortion providers in the Bay Area, is to support, you know, people of underrepresented communities, and to make sure that there are abortion providers from those communities to represent them. And I think that's like the next challenge.
Who is providing abortions in an allopathic medicine setting? You know, that is hard, because again, you have this culture of just high scrutiny and high criticism. And I do think that people like me have an easier time coming into this field, because I'm a white middle-class woman who generally people don't criticize very much. So to be the first generation in your family who's gone to college or medical school, to be a Black or brown woman in medical school, and then to say, like, oh, I'm going to go into this field that's like, actually, I mean, especially in California, is like somewhat competitive to go into, and, you know, you can't do it full time. You have to balance it with something else. And so you have to have some flexibility and some security, and not just from a financial and logistical standpoint. I mean, like, I have that security of being a white woman in America. It is a hard field to diversify, even more so than others. When you're talking about an interaction where vulnerability and trust are at like the center of what is happening in that room, and you only are with this doctor for 15 minutes, I very much wish that more of my patients could have a doctor who wasn't me.
Roe v. Wade has never been enough. It never guaranteed access to abortion. Black and brown communities disproportionately lack access to health care, and that includes abortion care. So people have found alternatives to give themselves the care they deserve.
I also have been in many like POC abortion worker only spaces, and I think it's okay to have it that way too.
When it comes to the people who are the most desperate, and that if something goes wrong, the people who are most afraid of seeking help, of telling a doctor, going to the hospital, you don't have to go down very far down that rabbit hole to see where that ends up. And it means, it's exactly as I'm like, yeah, my daughter's gonna be fine, but the women and their daughters who already have the most reason to be afraid, they're the ones. And that's just like, to me, that's just like everything that's the worst about this country, you know, it's just now this is going to be one of those things too. Don't worry about us. We're fine. You guys, God help you. Regardless of how optimistic or pessimistic you are, I think suddenly feeling that reality, like this was never safe.
There is a resiliency in oral tradition in communities of color, so that those traditions of herbal care, of traditional abortion work is preserved more because of the culture of resilience and the culture of sharing stories. Something they can't take away is our relationship with the plants. Even if there's been a gap for some generations, it's something to be picked up again. And like, I know which days I'm fertile and which days I'm infertile. If I had a sperm exposure, I would reach for a certain plant. It's really empowering. I learned of a story of how my grandmother supported my mom through a pregnancy release, and there was a recipe for the way that worked that I would have never learned in a book. And it even supported me when I released a pregnancy a year ago. You know, I think that there's so much value in talking to the people around us, because even if a lot of abortion stories have been quiet and hushed in our families, they exist. People have been having abortions. I think that it's time that those stories are uncovered. There's a couple books. Natural Liberty by the Sage Femme Collective is a really great book that talks about the history of self-managing abortions. It has an incredible list of different plants that are really expansive towards the smaller amount that are usually circulated, and so people can like look through that book and find a plant that maybe there was one of their grandmothers or their grandfather or one of their caregivers used, but maybe they used them in a different way. Finding the herbalists and the abortion doulas in your community, especially the overlap of those two things, and talking to them and seeing if they have any resources to share. These plants that are supportive for releasing are all around us. They're like growing on our street corners. They are on our shelves at our grocery stores. They just you might have an idea of them doing something else, but it's really the simple plants that smell good that are outside of your home that help release pregnancies.
In this country, it's still a radical act, it seems, to be an abortion provider, but I don't feel like it. I get to show up at work and work with an incredibly dedicated group of people who are so good at what they do. And we get to like see people at this moment in their lives and like peel back a layer, hold space for them and receive them whatever emotions they do or don't want to share. And we help them facilitate this process to be able to, like I said, be free in their bodies.
There's just nowhere else I would rather be, you know? Yeah, I think that becoming a mom made me a much better doctor for all my patients, for all my pregnant patients in particular, but especially for my patients who don't want to be pregnant. You know, I just have so much more compassion and ability to empathize. It gave me a much greater appreciation for the choices my patients are making.
Abortion is so beautiful. It's not a terrible thing. It lets people be free.